Hollywood, the land of perfect smiles, flawless faces, and endless glamour, until the surgeon's knife slips. Behind the red carpets and the retouched selfies are some of the most horrific plastic surgery disasters that have turned A-listers into expensive cautionary tales overnight. From swollen lips that never deflate faces frozen in a state of eternal surprise, to rejuvenation procedures that make everyone who sees them recoil, these 10 cases today will leave you slack-jawed shuddering and maybe canceling your filler appointment immediately. Every heartbreaking story has a beginning. For Pierce Brosnan, it began in a quiet town in Ireland, with the sound of a door slamming shut and a father who never returned. He was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland, into a world with no wealth, no legacy, and almost immediately no one to give him his name. His father, Thomas Brosnan, a carpenter, left the family when Pierce was too young to remember. There was no tragic accident, no farewell, just a silent disappearance. Years later, Pierce would reflect, "I never knew his face. I never heard his voice." Those words carry a deep pain that time could never heal. His mother, May, worked tirelessly as a nurse, trying to build a new life for the two of them. But in 1957, when Pierce was just 4 years old, she was forced to make the most heartbreaking decision a mother could face, leaving Ireland for London in search of work, promising to be gone for only a short time. However, that short time stretched into 7 long years. During her absence, Pierce had to piece together his life between various homes, first living with his grandparents in Navan, then with an aunt and uncle in Trim. Each place had its own rules, its own voices, and an atmosphere that never truly felt stable. The boy learned to stay silent, avoid drawing attention, and became more of an observer than a speaker. His teachers noticed a hidden light in him behind eyes that always seemed to gaze out of the window as if searching for something that couldn't be named. In 1964, when Pierce was 11 years old, his mother returned with her new husband, William Carmichael. William was a kind, patient man who never tried to replace the father Pierce had lost. He taught Pierce how to fish, how to fix things, and how to trust again. However, for a boy raised in brokenness, love could easily slip away if held too tightly. That same year, William took Pierce to see Goldfinger. The image of James Bond, portrayed by Sean Connery on the screen, strong, confident, and invulnerable, struck a deep chord in the young boy's heart. "That's the man I want to become," Pierce thought, and a small flame ignited within him. Now, at the age of 70, Lynn May has decided to speak out publicly, not because she wants to restore her lost fame or beauty, but to warn everyone about the potential pitfalls that can happen in life. Her story is not about a superficial choice, but a cautionary tale about blind trust, the failure to select the right expert, and the silent fear that many older people often feel when confronting old age. The message Lynn May wants to convey is a powerful reminder of the importance of caution when making decisions related to That moment completely changed his future. The members of the troupe saw in him a unique presence, resilience, and the weight of a life that had been shaped by hardship. Not long after Pierce was accepted into the London Drama School, one of the most rigorous acting programs where more than half of the students couldn't handle the pressure and dropped out, Pierce persisted, taking on odd jobs to support himself, continually studying Shakespeare, practicing mime, and even learning circus arts. He wasn't born into a wealthy family or given any advantages, but he carried within him the enduring flame of a boy who started from nothing and swore never to stop. In 1976, after years of hard training, Pierce landed his first professional role in the thriller Wait Until Dark, playing a character who hides in the shadows, always ready to act at any moment. A year later, he appeared in Tennessee Williams' The Red Devil Battery Sign, a play that had failed in America but was revived in London thanks to his captivating performance. From there, he began landing roles on both television and in film, starting with humble beginnings. Pierce Brosnan appeared for less than 30 seconds on screen with Elizabeth Taylor in The Mirror Cracked, earning just £50 for the role. That same year, he starred in The Long Good Friday alongside Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. Although it was a small part, the film later became a classic, admired by many. He slowly but steadily began building his reputation. In 1982, fate smiled upon him once again. While auditioning for a minor role in NBC's new detective series, Remington Steele, Pierce was offered the lead role. At 29, virtually unknown in the U.S., he was far from the charming American playboy the role was originally intended for. But when he stepped into the audition room, the role was his. When Remington Steele premiered on October 1, 1982, the show attracted 15.6 million viewers each week, airing in over 80 countries, and quickly made Pierce Brosnan a household name. However, fame also brought its own pressures. Almost immediately, critics and fans began calling him the next James Bond, a title that would follow him for over a decade. By the early 1980s, Pierce Brosnan was no longer an up-and-coming actor, but a name frequently mentioned as the top choice to play James Bond. In 1983, Bond producer Albert "Cubby" Broccoli saw Brosnan when he visited the set of For Your Eyes Only, where his wife actress Cassandra Harris was performing. Broccoli turned to someone next to him and said, "If he can act, he's my man." But fate had not yet opened the door for Brosnan. Roger Moore, nearing the end of his time as 007, was convinced to return for a special contract, and Brosnan's opportunity slipped away once again. By 1986, history seemed to repeat itself. When Remington Steele was canceled, Brosnan was free and the Bond role opened up once more. Negotiations began, but before the contract could be signed, NBC suddenly revived Remington Steele for another season, binding Brosnan to his contract. The Bond role was ultimately given to his close friend, Timothy Dalton. Although he remained polite on the outside, Brosnan was deeply disappointed. In the following 8 years, a period fans called Bond's missing years, Brosnan continued working hard. He starred in tense thrillers like The Fourth Protocol, psychological dramas like Nomads, and even appeared in humorous Diet Coke commercials, dressed in a tuxedo, slyly referencing the Bond role he had yet to conquer. Then in 1994, the life-changing phone call came. This time, he was no longer a newcomer, but a seasoned artist who had patiently waited and was now ready. GoldenEye became a major test for a struggling studio and a Bond franchise that seemed to be fading. If it failed, James Bond might have disappeared forever. Brosnan performed a miracle. The film grossed $353 million worldwide, reviving the franchise and bringing Bond back to a new generation of audiences. He performed most of his own stunts, including a bungee jump from a 220-meter-high dam, a shot that had been previously rejected by insurers for being too dangerous. The next 3 Bond films followed, collectively grossing $1.2 billion and cementing him as the iconic 007 in the hearts of millions of fans. Despite tempting offers from major projects like Steven Spielberg's Indiana Jones, Brosnan remained loyal to the role he had fought so hard to secure. In 2004, just as his career was at its peak, Brosnan's Bond journey came to an abrupt end. While filming Die Another Day, he received a brief phone call. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you. Goodbye." There was no warning or detailed explanation, just the information that younger candidates had been quietly considered for the role over the past 2 years. His final Bond film, Die Another Day, was the highest grossing in the Bond series, with $431 million, but that no longer mattered. Casting directors began to see him as too Bond for other roles. Opportunities grew scarce. Close collaborators moved on, and he entered a personally difficult phase of his life. Years later, his children recalled the first time they saw him cry, when the Casino Royale trailer was released. What he had lost wasn't just a role, but a part of himself. In the years that followed, Brosnan looked back on his journey not with bitterness, but with deep gratitude for every turning point, every rejection, every missed opportunity, every brilliant success, and even the pain. All of this shaped not just an actor known to the world, but the person he became. The true legacy of the Bond era lies not in box office revenue or iconic lines, but in the testament to resilience that can turn the longest challenges into pivotal moments in life. Many years later, Pierce Brosnan didn't look back on his life with bitterness, but with gratitude. The failures, the near-missed opportunities, both the glory and the loss, all of these have shaped a strong man, not just a glamorous James Bond on screen, but a real man who has overcome the toughest chapters of his life. His true legacy lies not in box office numbers or iconic lines, but in the unwavering strength that inspires millions. If you feel inspired by his journey, leave a 2. If not, comment 5 to share your thoughts. Enjoy the video and don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel for more meaningful content. They met in the late 1970s when his career was still uncertain and she was an established actress. Cassandra was raising 2 children, Charlotte and Christopher, from a previous marriage. She was a calm, captivating woman with an inner strength that commanded respect. Most men might hesitate at the responsibility of a ready-made family, but Pierce had no doubts. What drew him in was not just her radiant beauty, although she was truly captivating, but the warmth and genuine love she radiated. Cassandra Harris was not just the woman Pierce Brosnan loved, but the one who made the world feel less lonely for him. From the very beginning, when he came into Cassandra's life with her 2 children, he wasn't a stranger entering a family. He was someone who seemed to have always belonged there. In 1980, they married, and 3 years later, their son together, Sean, was born. In the family photos from that time, Brosnan's smile wasn't the charm of an up-and-coming star, but the deep contentment of a man who had found a true home. Later, he shared, "I had never been a father before. I was just Pierce." Then I became a father. It was that happiness that made the tragedy that followed even more brutal. In 1987, while working abroad, Cassandra began to feel tired, aching, and unwell without any clear cause. At first, they thought it was just exhaustion from all the travel. But when they returned to London, the brutal truth was revealed: ovarian cancer in its late stages. Pierce Brosnan described the feeling as if the ground beneath his feet had collapsed. One moment before they were living their everyday life, and the next moment everything shattered. The days that followed were spent in the cold hallways of hospitals, in the sterile scent of chemotherapy rooms, and in the quiet fear that lingered with every wait for results. For 4 relentless years, Cassandra battled through surgeries, long and painful treatments. The illness may have stolen her strength, her hair, and her life, but it could never take her dignity. She faced the disease with astonishing courage, always wanting to know the truth, making her own decisions and living each day with a poise that earned the admiration of all who witnessed it. Brosnan referred to himself as her quiet companion, always by her side, holding her hand, offering stability in moments when no words could ease the pain. But deep inside, he was breaking. At home, young Sean, still so small, would occasionally appear in his toy doctor outfit, holding a plastic stethoscope, treating his mother with imaginary medicine. It was an innocent and sweet moment, yet deeply heartbreaking, for both parents knew that the game couldn't change the reality. As death drew near, Cassandra spoke not much of her illness, but of love of life and of the strange peace found when one no longer avoids the truth. In her final moments, she whispered, "My love, don't worry. It's just a life coming to an end." A gentle farewell, yet filled with strength, the final gift of a woman who didn't want to be remembered merely as a patient. On December 28, 1991, just one day after their 11th wedding anniversary, Cassandra passed away at the age of 43. Pierce was by her side along with their son, Christopher. Her daughter, Charlotte, who was in London, could only speak with her one last time over the phone. Sean, just 8 years old at the time, was in the house, but too young to understand the permanence of that moment. Christmas had just passed, but the atmosphere in that house was heavy, silent, and filled with loss. In the days that followed, Pierce moved as if driven by instinct, handling the funeral, comforting others, and being a steadfast pillar for the 3 children, ensuring they had support. Night fell, and in the many nights that followed, he silently walked down the hallways, stopping at each door, listening to the steady breathing of his children, as if reminding himself that there was still something safe, still someone he needed to be strong for. Pierce once thought that losing Cassandra was the deepest pain a soul could bear. But life did not let go of him. It returned, cold, silent, as if it had been waiting. And this time, the pain didn't merely revisit old wounds. It tore them open, forcing him to relive every moment he had once prayed never to face again. 22 years after cancer took his beloved wife, it returned to claim his future, his daughter Charlotte. Charlotte was a radiant, kind-hearted, and resilient woman. Her smile carried the grace of her mother, her gentle touch, and the calm in chaos, all reminders of Cassandra. But hidden deep within was a darkness no one could see, a fateful inheritance from the mother lost. Charlotte was only 40 when the first signs appeared. Mild fatigue, vague aches, nothing alarming at first. But Pierce noticed the change immediately. He knew this rhythm all too well, the silence before the storm. And when tests confirmed what he had feared, it wasn't shock, but a deep, cold despair. Like her mother, Charlotte faced the illness with unwavering courage. For 3 consecutive years, she underwent surgeries, chemotherapy, and endless waits in clinics, heavy with the smell of antiseptic. Each treatment drained her more, but the fire of her determination still burned bright. Her motivation was her 2 children, Isabella 15 and Lucas 8. Children watching their mother slowly fade, just as she had watched Cassandra before. It was a brutal reflection, a tragedy repeating itself like a cold copy. Charlotte never begged for pity. She only asked for more time Time to show her children that love can overcome pain, that the memory of their mother is not just about illness, but also about courage. In June 2013, when her illness had reached an irreversible stage, Charlotte did something extraordinary. She wore a white dress, standing tall despite her weakening body, and married Alex, the man who had always stood by her side. Charlotte passed away at 41, Cassandra at 43. Lucas was 8, the same age as Sean when Cassandra died. Isabella was 15, the same age as Charlotte when her mother's illness was first revealed. It seemed that grief had its own design, coming back to carve the same wounds at the same ages with the precision of a surgical incision. Once again, Pierce stood in a place no father should ever have, to burying a child, burying a future. He tried to stay strong for his grandchildren, but some pains cannot be expressed in words. It wasn't a movie scene. It wasn't poetry. It was a deep silence that penetrated to the marrow, taking away the shape of the days to come. In 2014, at a Stand Up to Cancer fundraiser, the spotlight shone on him. It didn't make him stand out, but exposed him. His voice was steady, yet each word carried the weight of decades carved by loss. I held the large, strong, and beautiful hand of my first wife, Cassie, when ovarian cancer took her life too soon, he said. And just last year, I held the hand of my wonderful, joyful daughter, Charlotte, before she too passed away from this dreadful hereditary disease. The entire room fell silent. There was nothing more to add. Some pains never fade. They multiply, echoing through time, etching deep into every breath. Pierce Brosnan does not wear that pain like a medal. It has become a part of his very structure, woven into him like something unshakable, solid, and eternal like bone. He thought Charlotte's death was the final blow. That after losing both his wife and daughter to the same cruel disease, there was nothing more for life to take away. The similarity in their departures, separated by many years, but bound together by the same merciless illness, left a void in him. There are losses that make you feel as if you've been robbed, and there are losses that make you feel as though the ground beneath your feet has been erased. He had to endure both of these. Yet through all the sorrow, just when it seemed the weight of loss might bring him to his knees, there was Keely, the woman he met in 1994 under the most unexpected circumstances, a beach party in Cabo San Lucas. Just months before he officially became James Bond, but fame was not what defined him in that moment. He was still a man living in quiet grief, not seeking love, just trying to keep moving forward. She wasn't a part of the past. She was his future, his survival, his second chance. Keely was a journalist, warm-wise and uninterested in the spotlight. She didn't see him as an up-and-coming Bond star, but as a man still carrying grief too heavy to put into words. And he saw in her a calmness he hadn't felt in years. In the early days, she didn't try to erase his pain or force joy into places where it didn't belong. She was just there through sleepless nights, through anniversaries that felt like open wounds. She was still there. When Charlotte fell ill nearly 2 decades later, pulling Pierce back into the echoes of his first loss, Keely became his shield. She kept their home strong. She held him together, and she created space for his grief without demanding that he put it into words. They married in 2001 at an 800-year-old monastery surrounded by friends, family, and beauty that made time seem to stand still. For him, that day was not just a celebration. It was a declaration that despite everything he had lost, love still had a place in his life. It was the beginning of a new chapter, where he could be a father once again. This time with the two children they would have together, Dylan and Paris. In them, he didn't find a replacement for what was lost, but a continuation of his role as a father, a role that would always define him more deeply than any film ever could. Keely's love was not loud or boastful. It showed in the way she made birthdays matter, in how she warmed their home so that laughter still echoed even during the toughest days. It showed in how she never asked him to move on, but instead helped him live with the absence. When Charlotte passed away in 2013, Keely was still there, steadfast, resilient, protecting the fragile threads of a family that had already endured so much loss. She didn't try to replace what was lost. She became the anchor that kept him from sinking completely into sorrow. The studios began labeling him Bond, a fame so overwhelming that it became a prison, locking him out of opportunities rather than opening new doors. Its impact was both ruthless and swift. He was forced to let go of 12 loyal staff members. The man who had stood strong through personal grief now found himself drowning in another kind of sadness, the sadness of erasure. This wasn't a headline or a press release. Stalking Cat's goal was not to achieve fame or public attention, but to create harmony between his inner feelings and his outer appearance. Despite having a striking and completely different look from an ordinary person, Dennis lived a relatively quiet life. He appeared on several television shows such as Larry King Live and Ripley's Believe It or Not, and in 2008 he achieved the Guinness World Record for the most permanent modifications to resemble an animal. In later interviews, Brosnan would describe that period as one of the darkest times of his life, not because James Bond had ended for him, but because with it came the loss of purpose, the anchor in his career that had given him meaning after so many personal tragedies. When survival becomes the role that defines you, each loss carries the echo of all the others. And for Pierce Brosnan, it felt like losing everything all over again. Not every loss is marked by black attire or a gravesite. Although his choices may seem strange or incomprehensible to some, Dennis's story remains a reminder of the importance of identity and self-expression. Stalking Cat's journey is not only a testament to self-commitment, but also a profound reminder of the true meaning of living authentically. Even though the price paid might involve painful surgeries, physical complications, and continuous public scrutiny for Dennis, it was an act of freedom and the right to be himself. Pierce didn't see a stepson or a biological son. He saw just a son. He adopted Christopher, gave him his name, and stepped into his life as a father. It wasn't just a title, but a commitment. They bonded over film sets, laughter, and the simple routines of family life. There was a time when they couldn't be separated. But when Cassandra passed away, something in the foundation of the family cracked. Charlotte held the pieces together with grace. Sean leaned on Pierce for strength, but Christopher carried his sorrow in a different way, quietly, heavily, and in ways that no one could truly reach. Over time, the pain turned inward. Issues with drugs began to creep in, not as moral failures, but as battles with a darkness that refused to let go. What started quietly became harder to hide. Legal problems, close calls with death moments where the weight of it all nearly took his life. Pierce did everything a father could do. Treatment, long conversations, countless chances, even just sitting by his side in silence. But the truth was harsh. Love alone couldn't bring him back. In a rare moment of honesty, Pierce admitted, "Christopher is still so lost. I know where he is, but his life is hard. He knows how to get out, but he doesn't want to." There was no anger in his voice, just the pain of a man who had run out of ways to save someone who wasn't ready to be saved. Following the surgery, Yulia not only suffered severe facial swelling, but also had to deal with noticeable keloid scars, a condition she had never experienced before. Most alarmingly, she could not fully close her eyes even when attempting to rest or sleep. Actions that seemed normal, such as closing her eyes or smiling now, became a daily challenge for her. The daily feeling of unnaturalness and discomfort left Yulia feeling utterly pained and helpless. For Pierce, it was another kind of funeral, one without ceremony. Losing a child to death is a pain no parent should ever endure, but losing them to life while they are still there, still breathing and walking, is a quiet devastation all its own. Pierce never turned this pain into a public event. On Father's Day in 2022, he posted a rare message that included Christopher's name, a simple act, but one that spoke volumes. Love never leaves. It will never leave. And perhaps that is the hardest truth about this kind of grief. Some goodbyes don't need to be spoken. They are lived every day in the silence between phone calls in the distance across the years, and in the stubborn, unshakable hope that one day this story is not over. The curtains never truly fall on some stories. For Pierce Brosnan, the current chapter in his life isn't about box office numbers or the flash of paparazzi cameras. It's about meaning. After decades marked by unimaginable personal losses, career upheavals, and a kind of sorrow that could hollow out even the strongest heart, he did not choose to retreat. Instead, he chose to rebuild, to rise, and to make the remaining years count. Today, the man once defined by a tuxedo and a gun is now more recognized by the brush in his hand, the causes he defends, and the family that stands by him. Pierce Brosnan's life is not just a story of success or glory, but a journey of overcoming pain, rediscovering himself, and rebuilding from the fragments. He didn't let sorrow or loss define his life. Instead, he chose a path full of meaning where family and true values are what matter the most. So what do you think about Pierce's journey? Could we all learn from how he faces challenges and transforms his pain into strength? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to catch more meaningful videos coming soon. Thank you for being with us.